Hey everybody, welcome to Northern Thailand and welcome to an all-new playlist series known as Worm Bin Weekends. This is a series that's going to be dedicated specifically to the progress of the worms processing through the contaminated green waste that the black soldier fly larvae have already previously processed through. My bins, just to give you the basics, if you didn't already see the Bioremediation Stage 3 video, are African night crawlers. There's 3 bins, 14 gallons each, and unfortunately that was the only size I could find here in Thailand. There weren't any 10-gallon ones like back in the US. And it's also a particular brand from Rubbermaid that I've never seen before called Brute. So anyway, they look to do pretty well from what I can tell. But again, just to run down the basics, there's 3 bins. Each bin contains roughly about 100 African night crawlers each. Now, all the other information, if you're interested, please do check out the Bioremediation Stage 3 video. If you're somebody that just enjoys watching people, how they manage their bins, how they process through things, you're gonna enjoy this as well. So if you just wanna sit back and enjoy that, I'm gonna be going through all 3 bins in one video here, and provided it's not too long, I may keep that format moving forward. So with no further ado, let's check in because it's been 9 days now since the worms were added to these bins, and it's time to take a look and see how they're doing. So let's do it. All right, here we are, week 1, bin 1 of Worm Bin Weekends. Now, before I get started, I just want to go over a couple basic things. And for those of you that already saw my Bioremediation Stage 3 video, I apologize in advance, but there's some things in there that I think bear repeating. If you're new to vermicomposting and you are thinking about setting up a worm bin, or you've just set up a worm bin and it's all new to you, please make sure that you wear a glove. This one's a little wet and I'm going to show you why in a little bit. It has to do with the way that my setup is, but please wear a glove. Don't pick your worms up with your bare hands. There's a couple specific reasons for that. Number one, worms breathe through their skin, and our skin contains oils and all kinds of stuff that is very easily transferred onto the skin of the worm, and that can cause them all kinds of stress. So try and use a glove. In fact, don't try, do use a glove whenever you're working with your worms so that you can alleviate that problem right out the gate. One of the other things though, specific to that, is that, if you wash your hands with soap, give yourself at least an hour from the last time you washed, and then maybe wash about 15 minutes before you start working on your worm bin with just straight water, because worms hate soap. I've been keeping worm bins since around 2010, 2011, and an old trick that we used to use was to get our hands nice and soapy and sudsy and go on the outside ridges of the bin with our hands, just to allow the soap to be on the outside, not on the inside, but on the outside of the bin, to keep worms from escaping, because the minute they sense soap or even come anywhere near it, they repel. They do not like soap. So make sure you use a glove. A couple of other things, and I already said this in this Bioremediation Stage 3 video, but these bins are still very new. They're 14-gallon Rubbermaid totes. They're a particular brand called Brute, which I've never seen before, and I've never seen 14-gallon totes anywhere in the US. I was looking for 10 gallons because I wanted to try to keep smaller size bins, which is why the holes that you see on the sides here are drilled very low. And even still, there's a good almost 9 inches worth of depth from the lowest hole down to the bottom of the bin. It's plenty of space. I don't have holes on the tops of my bins, and I don't have them on the bottoms of my bins, because specifically what we're trying to address here is bioremediation of potentially contaminated green waste. And by contaminated, I mean contaminated with heavy metals. So the last thing I want is holes on the bottom for the leachate to get out from. And the reason I don't drill any holes up on top is because I do stack these bins in a water tub. Now, the reason for the water tub is because here in Thailand, the ant is like the national animal. You cannot go anywhere. I don't care if it's in the greatest house in Thailand to the lowliest house in Thailand, there's always going to be ants. Red ants, black ants, big ones, small ones, they're everywhere. The whole idea behind the water tub for me stacking these together is to keep as many creepy crawlies away from the bins as possible. Because in addition to ants, we also get centipedes, and they are nasty. So that's the reason for the design, and the reason why I keep it indoors is to keep the pests away. The other thing is I really do want to keep these 2 specific processes of black soldier fly larvae and the African night crawlers separate. The BSFL do their work outside, and once they're finished with all of their processing and I have their wet frass left over, that's when I process it into the worm food, and then I bring that inside, and that too is inside of a water tub. So these two processes, very specific, very separate, but they all work together for the same result, and that is going to have just beautiful worm castings at the end of this, and hopefully a lot cleaner environment here in my home so they can actually start to build a garden. That's the whole name of the game. That's the reason why I'm doing the bioremediation, and frankly, it's something that all of us as gardeners and even farmers should be doing on a routine basis. Okay, so those are the basics. If you haven't seen the Bioremediation Stage 3 video yet, please take a look at it. But if you just enjoy looking at how people keep their bins and how they manage them, how the feedings go and the worm balls and all that, you know what, just kick back and enjoy this too, because there's going to be a lot of that over these next few weeks. With all that said, let's finally dig into worm bin number 1. Now it's been 9 days. These bins were set up back on September 1st with the bedding and the leaf mold. They were given the banana tea with a single banana on the 2nd of September. I was not supposed to get the worms until today, but I got them on the 3rd because of miscommunication between my supplier and I. It's just part of being lost in translation when you live in a foreign country. Anyway, it's been 9 days since they got put in. I've checked on them sparingly, only when I get escapees, like either in the water tub or just on top of the lids to keep them from drying out and dying. But enough of that. Let's take a look at the worms. Bin 1. No condensation really to speak of on the lid. That dark area there, that's a coffee drip from when I added some coffee to the bin. But no worms, no condensation. That's a good start. That means that this plastic piece down here has done its job, and it looks like it has. You can see that there's condensation collected really specifically here in the middle, but it's also on the sides as well. Got a little bit of bedding up on the sides, which means the worms have been actively crawling around, but right now I don't see any up on the tops or anywhere. Okay, this one had a lot of coffee. This also is my coldest bin because this is the one that's on the bottom of the water tub stack that's actually submerged partially in the water. It's not very deep, but it's deep enough that it's actually cold. I did temperature checks over these past 9 days on all 3 of the bins, and this one is definitely the coldest of the 3. So it could also explain why if I don't see a lot of activity, that could be the reason why. But that has condensation and a little bit of castings and some bedding on it. Put this to the side. Now let's see how the worms are doing. Where shall we start? We fed right down the middle with a banana. This one had probably the least amount of leaf mold of the 3. I don't know why, but I did not evenly distribute those out through all 3 bins. But now let's start digging through and see what we find. Okay, look, this is definitely out of view, but the worms right now are definitely on the sides of the bin. You can see them right here. These are really big worms. These African night crawlers are no joke. And voracious feeders from what I understand. This is my first time keeping this species, but they are really on the sides. Looks like there's a lot of condensation on the sides that they've been going through. If I was to not feed these guys, they literally could survive off of nothing but the brown corrugated cardboard that I make my bedding with alone, and they would be happy. But they definitely will go through food waste, and my hope is that once I'm able to stabilize the worm chow from the black soldier flies, is they're going to go through that as well. But you can see that they definitely are collected here on the sides. They're very big worms. They don't squirm around a lot, but they definitely, these are some big boys and girls. So I don't want to disturb them too much if they're still, they're still getting used to this bin. This bin still has really not gone through its cycles. And again, I'm going to try to stay on topic here and not veer off too much to what I've already previously discussed from the bioremediation video, but there's a mesophilic and a thermophilic cycle that every new bin has to go through, and that's just the heating up cycles. They go through different stages. The reason why I felt as comfortable as I did to put these worms in when I did was because African night crawlers can definitely take the heat. If this was a red wiggler bin, or if this was European night crawlers, I would have been really stressed out at taking them as early on as I did, because these bins are still cycling. But they seem to be doing okay. They're really congregated mostly on the sides. And I know you can't really see that well unless I bring some of them up. These are very big worms. Okay. So knowing that they're on the sides primarily, let's take a look at the center where I fed. We got the coffee grounds in here. And just one lone banana right down the middle. So let's take a look and see what we got. Well, that looks the same as it did the day I boiled it. A whole lot going on there, I don't think. Nope. Well, this is just a sign that they're still getting used to the bin. And it's not that it doesn't feel like there's ample moisture in here. There definitely is. It's not like I can squeeze a drop of water out of it, but see how it's mashing together and I've got moisture on my glove? There's definitely moisture in the bedding. It just may be dry in certain areas that causing them not to want to move around. Plus, again, it's a new system. This is a completely new artificial environment for them. When I got these guys, my supplier told me he kept them outdoors and their bedding and their food source was the same. It was pig and cow manure. So it's going to probably take a generation of these worms to get used to this bedding, get used to the food, and we'll just have to see. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to disturb them too much because they're still just getting used to this. What I am going to do is I'm going to put a fairly large size feeding together here right down the middle. And I'm going to keep it in the middle just for the initial going until I see that they actually start to process through this food. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, and I don't know if you've ever seen this before or not, but hard-boiled egg. Oh yeah, that's going to stink, trust me. If they don't get to it right away. A clump of rice. This is just steamed rice. There's no seasoning, no salt, no anything. Just plain old rice. And yes, I do use chopsticks to feed my worm bins. I live in Asia. It's really convenient. I mean, it's easy just to drop stuff in exactly where you want it. It's not a problem at all. Plus, I mean, I get chopsticks with almost every meal if I order out, and it's like instead of plastic utensils, you get wooden ones. And let's see what else we got here. Ooh, how about a couple more nasty hard-boiled eggs? Boy, that looks disgusting. And one more, just for good measure. I'm gonna break these up too, and I know that they're gonna stink, but you know what? That's okay. Let's continue with the feeding. Some banana peels, some rice, some hard-boiled eggs. And for those of you that are new to vermicomposting, what I'm doing right now, these are some favorite foods of worms, at least worms that I've kept in the past. I've kept red wigglers, European night crawlers. This is my first time keeping African night crawlers. I have no idea what they're going to be like. I know based off of other YouTubers that keep them, how they kind of act and respond. They have a tendency to wander. They can be a little picky, but they are voracious feeders, and so I'm anticipating that they'll enjoy these foods, because this is not going to be what they normally get. And I am also going to be committing kind of a cardinal sin here. I'm not adding any grit to this initial feeding. Now, the reason why grit is important for a worm, much like a bird, worms have gizzards, okay? And That gizzard requires grit to be able to digest and process the foods that they consume. If you don't give them some type of grit to consume this food with, what will end up happening is they can run the risk of getting something known as string of pearl disease. That's where the worm literally gets this digestive issue where they get these segmented lumps in their body that turn white, and they literally look like a string of pearls. And with worms as long as these African night crawlers, they probably could be a string of pearls. You definitely don't want that to happen to your worms. It's a very painful process that they go through, and it's a death sentence to the worm. So this is the only feeding where grit is not going to be applied. The worm chow that I've already processed and I have stabilized to get to a neutral pH is loaded with grit. It has powderized, crushed up eggshell, and the compost from my compost pile, all of which is nothing but grit. And with the compost, it is the most natural form of grit that these worms are used to in the wild. So that will be next week. Hopefully by then the chow will be stabilized. But for this week, just a simple feeding. That's a pretty big feeding though. In addition to the coffee grounds and the banana that was already in there, that's a whole lot of food. And now here's something else. This is kind of special. See these guys here? They were in the pool, swimming, thinking they were at Club Med or something. Naughty boys and girls. So you know what? They're gonna go right in the middle with the food. I'm telling you, they love this water tub. They really do. I think they think they're Club Med or something. They're at the beach. So let's go ahead now. Let's cover this up. And we are good for a week at the very least. If you want to know the truth, I probably should give this somewhere between 7 to 10 days, but I'm thinking we can do a weekly update, Worm Bin Weekends. And yeah, it should be fun. We're gonna see how these guys fare. I really am hoping that as I get the worm chow stabilized, that they actually enjoy going through that material, because obviously the whole reason for it is because I'm addressing, my whole garden operates off of a theory, okay? And the working theory that I'm operating off of is that I have contaminated soil from heavy metals. And the reason is because of the stuff that I pulled out of here trash-wise has led me to believe that there's probably heavy metal contamination in my soil. So I haven't even planted the actual hyperaccumulator plants, which is gonna be Indian mustard, for my soil yet. I've just been using this whole process as kind of a test to see if I can first get the BSFL, which I did, to process through it, and now see if I can get the worms to actually eat it. Now that the rain has stopped here in Thailand, I'm going to be going directly to planting that into the certain areas of my garden that I want to start on. And once those plants come up, the Indian mustard, that's going to be what goes through this whole remediation process that you've seen through these previous videos I've been talking about. Anyway, that's the feeding for this week. I'm going to give them a little bit of water just to make sure that I can keep things kind of moist in here. And we're going to lock it up until next week. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to having all of you join along with me in this adventure. All right. Plastic. Worm Bin Weekends, week 1, bin 1 is now finished. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't already, please do like and share it. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell notification icon for when I upload new content. Until next time, wherever you are in this world today or tonight, take care. Bye for now.